and I can see them after work. Today I want to do a video discussing this strange looking thing in front of me. And I suppose what it is it's a 30-30. It's the Muzzle, or it's actually a Glenfield. This is a 1980 rifle. It's a reasonably old rifle. It's in reasonably poor condition, but it was something that I got for, and I suppose what I'm up to, what I'm actually doing, it isn't really anything, or there's multiple little things that I've had in my head over years. And I'm seeing if I can build something out of that, out of trying to line up all those little details. And I suppose I'll go through and explain a little bit what I'm up to. This was a rifle, second-hand rifle I bought recently. It is in okay condition, and mechanically it's fine. There's a fair bit of surface rust on the rifle. The wood's in okay condition, but nothing is too flash with it. It's back in the early, or not early, but it's back in the 80 models of 1980s in the way of the Muzzle. It has 1 in 10 twist micro groove barrel. Listen, it's a basics, a starting point for things where everything was going to be okay for starting this project. Like I said, what is this project? Well, that's a little bit hard to explain, and I suppose I have to segue a fair bit to get to that. One is, I've shot, or people who follow the channel know that I use lever actions in the normal form. Like right here, the 45-70, done lots of shooting with it. This has the M94 ladder sights on it, which I've shot at extreme long range and all sorts of strange holes. I use it a lot in the normal format, really like the Muzzle and really like how they work. Well, all the lever actions, to be truthful, I really like and really comfortable with them. But there's some details about a normal lever action which make it not ideal, not in my level of things anyway, for precision shooting, certainly not in a prone form. Where your face sits, trying to shoot them in a prone form, trying to get your shoulder, your face, all that sort of stuff, it doesn't really work very nicely. I see a lot of people shoot them off the bench. I don't really like shooting them off the bench either. I really like shooting them offhand, and that's what they're quite well designed for. But even in that format, once you get your a lever action, with the fact they're set up with the butt pad is quite low, so you're quite underneath the line of push is quite over the top of your shoulder. When they go, they sort of come back against your shoulder and then they go up in the air. That's quite normal. That actually sort of helps relieve a little bit of the push of recoil, in truth. But in the way of precision shooting, sight picture, all that sort of stuff, it's getting moved away. The other thing is, you notice people who don't shoulder them that well, or getting down closer when they're really whack, you'll tend to find that same upward angle there comes back and punches in the cheekbone. Not uncommon to get a little bit of a bruise around the cheekbone, especially a lighter frame person or someone who isn't holding the rifle properly, but really coming in and probably trying to line up. You can end up with a bit of a punch in the face from the cheekbone side of things. This classic design, like them, don't get me wrong, but it's features that I know about the lever action, which then I thought, okay, and I suppose I'll put this back down. My thoughts to go with that were a little bit, can I turn that into something that I can make it for prone shooting, work properly there, can turn into something that has a straight line of push so that it doesn't raise the muzzle up, it comes straight back against you, it doesn't push against your cheekbone side of things. It still is a lever action. They're very easy things to cycle in a offhand shooting, doing that side of things. So there's a little bit of a, can I make a lever action into a do everything rifle in extreme precision, not just really good guy work off a hand or all that sort of stuff, but actually go down to prone and get down to where we can get under 1 MOA at, let's say, 500 yards or beyond, to a degree. But then the other key ingredient that's been nagging me for a little while is how good I think a 30-30 round is. Now, it's an old style, it's an old rimmed cartridge. So this is the classic, what people are used to seeing them with. They have a lead nose bullet, flat nose bullet, not very efficient at traveling through the air. Great hunting round, but largely used up to sort of the 150 yards type thing, maybe up to 300, but really more of a close range thing with a lot of power. But it's still got a moderate amount of powder in there. It can still run, there's very good 30 cal projectiles to go with them. And if you go to just, this is some ones here. This is some Hornady with a bit better of a Spitzer bullet. I think they're 160 grain with the tip in them. There's a couple of hand loads I've done up, something with 150 grain Hornady with a decent ballistic coefficient projectile, and this is 155 grain Palmer in the SMK. So obviously, for people aware of when you are running these in a magazine tube, then you need to have the soft points. You can't run the solid points on the front there. But equally, as for anyone who uses a lever action lock knows, they're not that hard to single feed either. So in a prone format, you have all these options available to you. But it is a efficient round, decent amount of powder, a decent projectile. It's going to be able to do the job quite well. So how accurate can I actually make a 30-30? Now in making a 30-30 accurate, really easy, been done multiple times before. You build a bolt action rifle to run a 30-30. And then you can set it up with all the normal bolt action features. My thoughts were, hey, listen, why don't I try and build something out of the whole lot? Why don't I try and do the whole thing? So this is the beginning of, not the end of, the beginning of, and maybe it's a little bit weird in places, but of starting to do all those things. So to start off with, I have a mechanically sound Marlin, well, this is the Glenfield 30-30 rifle. So barrel's going to be okay. Yes, I could do a different barrel, but barrel's going to be okay. And I suppose it's a little bit sort of budget concept, starting in a place and not just building stuff for the sake of it. We'll start and test things. So we had it just as that rifle, it came with a scope rail on it. I pulled the scope rail off and I went out and shot it like that. It shot fine. It was a decent offhand rifle to shoot. With some hotter loads, it did the little thing, it pushed a little bit, that sort of stuff. It is that sort of rifle. They do have a bit of a whack to them. Anyone who knows the 30-30 in the small, and I've forgotten, I think this is the 20-inch barrel, might be 18-inch barrel, but in that sort of rifle, they shoot in that particular fashion, where they've got a nice little whack to them, but you could run softer loads through them, that sort of stuff. But the hunting rounds have a bit of a kick. It has a little bit of a muzzle rise type thing, but they're fine to shoot. No problems there whatsoever. Something I'm fine with. Sam was less comfortable with shooting like that. Then I started to go through some designs. Now I have sort of designed a buttstock on the back here, which, as you see, there's quite a few in the world now where there's skeletonized, aluminium skeletonized buttstocks to go on these. They follow the same angles as normal, so you're not really achieving anything there apart from a look. I want to change all the angles, move it. I have done some drawings. I'll put them on here as some drawings as to raise things up. But what I've done here for this sake is I've built a steel butt pad. It's just got a little bit of rubber on it, but a steel butt pad. Haven't raised it quite as high as probably I should from the test I've done anyway. And then there's a solid rail in here. I won't break point to piece. There's a solid bar in there. So I've got a proper cheek riser that's up high. And then I put on this Pistoli cheek cover, which basically gives me a quiver, whatever you want to call it, so I can run rounds on the back of it. Looks okay, that sort of stuff. And it's just Velcroed on. So that's what I did in the back there. I also actually, when I went out and tested it, I put on one of my angled buttstock Bagriders on the back there, so that I then had a proper Bagrider on the back of it. I cleaned everything, made sure all right in the gun, that sort of stuff. I did a little test with, well, I set up to start off with just a normal Picatinny rail in the front here, but I thought if I'm doing it, why don't I do the whole thing if I'm going to try and test precision with the rifle. So I mounted one of, basically properly mounted, so there's a little bit of a light steel insert inside the fore-end guard here, and bolted one of my component Ds. This is my super low component D to here, which actually then all lined up nicely to go around. It's not touching, all around the barrel. Of course, keep in mind with a lever action, or pretty much all of them, there is a point in here where that actually, this steel plate mounts to the barrel. So you do have interference with the barrel. This lever action design comes before the world understood about harmonics and that sort of level and a free floating barrel. So it is actually bolted to the barrel effectively. That may be a Achilles heel it can never get around. We're going to see. We're going to work with that's how they're designed, and I've then mounted as much as I can to the forehand. It's only that same place they normally have there. So my component A on there, the legs, that sort of stuff, probably all a level too far, and a normal bipod would do the thing fine, but I was doing it as thoroughly as I possibly could. And then just as weird as everything else is the mount I made here, which is actually a couple of pieces of aluminium, 10mm each. So I raised the whole scope rail, this is a 40 MOA scope rail on the top here, to be able to get all the adjustment and everything out of the scope I'm sitting on top here. So raised it right up in the air. Now that's through the simple logic of, as I've spoken about many times, about raising your scope height. And there's a lot of people that say, oh, I couldn't have it up there, that's terrible, it should be low and all that type of thing. Well, no, get the shoulder to position the right and then raise the scope up to suit. And I suppose I'd point out for those people who don't really understand that, have a look at your AR platforms, have a look at your old M16, have a look at when even the military that was dealing with semi-automatic and fully automatic fire, by basically raising the point of line of you push at the back here up, meant that it stopped from going up in the air and as they were firing. But to do that, that's why you have very high iron sights, and that's why you have very high scope sights. That's to get the rifle to shoot straight so it doesn't get out of control. That's the fundamental engineering that's attached to it. There's other details and probably other myths attached to it too, but the fundamental engineering is if you can get, as this one now does, and I'll fold that away, which it does work on that format. If you can get to where then you're up here, then I'm moving closer into where that line of push on the shoulder is straight. So that is exactly how I've done this. Down here, find where I'm comfortable, where it feels like it's on my shoulder, it's in the right place, open my eyes, and I'm looking straight through my scope. That's the design of that there, and that's why that scope is so high. Is it high enough? Well, that's the next test. What I did just do a test with was with only one 10mm rail in there, and with the butt pad how I had it. It was a tiny bit under that line, but I sort of felt I was pushing the boundaries enough. So I tried it like that, and there was still a little bit of muzzle rise. Now, yes, probably to build this into precision and doing everything as well as it can, and really breaking even more of the rules of the lever action crowd, we'll run a muzzle brake here as well. But as also I've expressed in previous videos, the way I like to do things is to make the thing do things well without the muzzle brake interfering, and then put a muzzle brake on just to help with recoil retardation. So this first test, I think this is a little bit low, and this was low. I've raised this up now, it all looks fine. But I want to go and test it again now. I've raised things up and see where if you're not really shouldering a rifle, you're not really focusing on exactly where you're positioning it here. You're focusing on getting your body to getting the rifle feeling right and your eye position into it. So raising this might be enough, but I think I need to raise the back here.
Yeah.
Probably my next bit would be to go through and build the aluminium section on the back here to make it all a aluminium piece. It would probably remove a little bit of the weight attached to doing the wood out and doing the aluminium bit there. Whether I put wood sides on it, I don't know, we'll see. But that's probably the next step, but we'll see. I suppose a little bit at the moment. I suppose what I'd explain was I went out and shot it, and listen, it was okay. The action of rifle was okay, but the accuracy wasn't awesome yet. We probably had around the 2.5 MOA group, was roughly what I was seeing. It was a very bad footage day in the fashion of it was really overcast, supposed to be clear, but we're just having a bit of a cold, cloudy winter. So there's been sort of more of a month in it now where the sun doesn't get out much at all. So it's okay to do the shoot. It's really hard to do any video work, especially in long range video work. You just don't have vision. So it was a test, and I really wanted to see how the rifle felt. It was all up a little bit higher. I could go through that process. I was single feeding. I tested with, I didn't use those ones. I did do some offhand shooting and some magazine shooting with just the normal Hornadies. And with these other ones here where I loaded with the soft tips, obviously just single fed most of the stuff when I was down prone, which I found really no problem to do whatsoever. They work nicely. But it also functions nicely as apart from the fact my fingers and loading and that sort of stuff, I want to smooth off these gates a little bit to make them a little nicer so my fingers can go in there and get the projectiles in there. But really sort of doing everything sort of pretty nice. I'm also certain that there's a whole heap of lever action people that are offended looking at what they're looking at. Realistically, there still is able to turn back into the gun it was, but it is a gun that was of lower quality, which I would be, if you were trying to get this back to nice, you'd be putting a new barrel in it, you'd be putting new furniture on it. So that's the stuff I'm going to mess with. The other feature which I'd point out, which I'm aware of, is being rust around the crown on this rifle. And the crown condition, because of that sort of things, may well be causing accuracy issues. So I'll have to recrown it, and I think at the same time I'll put a thread on it and then do a muzzle brake test. So step by step, I want to get that action of the rifle working nicely, and then we will see what the accuracy is like, and then I'll do the recrowning, and then we'll do the muzzle brake, and we'll see what we get to. My real idea here, regardless of it, whether if it's logical or not, but is to get, I suppose, a little bit of the, I see these tactical chassis out there, or you know, furniture for the old lever actions out there, and I would like to have it have a purpose. So I understand it, the tactical lever action. I'm really trying to build a lever action that can do a bit more, I suppose, is what I'm after. But it's also, listen, 30-30, like I said, all the things I started with, I don't really have a good reason for it. It's just a little bit, I'll see what we can turn this into. It's not going to make me not want to use the normal lever action with the normal sights. I like to use the Skinner peep sights, that sort of stuff, but it's not going to make me not want to use those in the normal format. But to build something that's a bit different, and if I can make this, it's already actually fine to shoot prone. No muzzle brake, no nothing, it's fine to shoot prone. It is a little bit heavy at the moment, so it sort of compromised itself on an easy carry rifle. I didn't weigh it to start off with, but we're just over 10 pounds now, so you know, if you're actually trying to do everything, you'd get it down in weight a little bit. But it's not terrible. This is also a quick release scope, so we'll run a 10x1 on the top there if we want to, when we want to, sort of stuff. So it is, there is other options, maybe work out some iron sights to work with this sort of thing. There's some bits and pieces to it. I haven't weighed it like this. The just over 10 pounds was with the whole scope on there, and this is a zero tech scope. I'll put the details below. Anyway, that's what I've been playing with at the moment. Yeah, like I said, I'm no doubt it offended some, but there is a little bit of a logic to go with it, and really just seeing where we end up and turn this into something that, like I said, the goal of me trying to get this to work would be a 1 MOA group at 600 yards. I don't know if it's achievable with this barrel or with this rifling, but that's sort of what I'm going to push at and see what I can actually pull off. Anyway, guys, that's what I got for you today. I hope you liked the video. Thanks very much for checking in, and we'll catch you next time.